were looking at the market for pizza, where we were looking at the market supply and the market demand. Upward sloping was market supply, right? Which is basically made up of all the restaurants who produce pizza in a market, right? And then downward sloping is your market demand, which shows how much quantity of pizza is demanded by all the different consumers in the market, right? Okay. Now, this being said, so if this was the original equilibrium, right? Which is where the two curves are intersecting, right? Now, these as well. So downward sloping is market demand, upward sloping is market supply. So this was the original equilibrium. Now, what has happened? The input used to produce pizza has increased. So do you remember which of the two factors will it affect? Will it affect supply? Will it affect demand? Which of the two factors will it affect? The market supply or the market demand, right? That should be easy, right? We have already discussed this. The supply will shift leftwards and demand will have contraction and prices will increase. Exactly. Now think about this. With more cost of production, what will that do? Students, with more cost of production, your profit per pizza has reduced. The restaurant's profit per pizza due to higher cost of production. If everything else is the same, with higher cost of production, their profits will decrease. And when profits decrease, how will producers respond to this? When profits decrease, how do producers respond to it? They are not interested in producing more quantity. In fact, they will start producing less. Yes or no? Because what did I say? Since supply shows producer behavior, and what is it that producers are most concerned with? It's their profit. So supply curve of a product shows producer behavior, and producers are most interested in earning profit, profit being revenue minus cost. So if the cost of production is increasing, as I just told you, that the cost of ingredients has increased to produce pizzas, so therefore this has gone up, which obviously means that overall profit has gone down. So now there are less incentives to produce pizza. Therefore, it will cause a leftward shift in the supply curve. Your supply curve moves from this pink MS1 to MS to MS1, right? Now, this is where the new equilibrium is, because this is the new supply curve. This is your market demand. So wherever the two intersect, that is your new equilibrium. And what will that do? Your equilibrium price has increased, as you can see, and your equilibrium quantity has decreased. So that is how you will show this on the graph. Any confusion so far? So supply decreased, and due to decrease in supply, there is what? Due to decrease in supply, students, what happened? There has been contraction in demand. Why is there a contraction? Because when things become expensive, what do people do? So pizza is higher price, but the burgers and all the other food items are the same price. Don't you think that you'll switch from these items to other items? Some people, not everyone, right? I'm not saying, right? So previously each pizza was, let's say, for 2,000 rupees that we assumed initially. Now, if that has become to increase to 2,500 rupees per pizza, so some people will give up on consuming pizza, and therefore the equilibrium quantity will decrease from Q1 to Q2. Anyone still not sure? Anyone still not clear what is going on? Khadija, did you get this? Right? Easy? Any confusion? Right. So let's do one last example and then we'll start off with the new topic as we discussed. Right. So one last example. Now let's assume another market. What type of market can we assume? What thing do you want to assume? Right. Perfect. Right. One more example. What market can you want me to think about? Right. So, okay, let's say this is the market for laptops, right? So let's say this is the market for laptop, or let's say, what do we call that? MacBook. So let's say this is the market for MacBook. So how much is the total supply of MacBooks produced by Apple, right? How much is the quantity demanded? How many people are willing to buy MacBooks? That's market demand, right? Wherever the two intersect, that is equilibrium, right? So each MacBook is for, let's say, on average, 3 lakh, 4 lakh rupees. I don't know, 2 lakh rupees Pakistani, right? Or let's keep it in dollars. That's where it's easier. Let's say $1,500 per MacBook, right? And total quantity that is being sold in 1 year, let's say, is 1 million. Just making that up. Obviously, I don't know for sure. Okay. Now, let's say that Samsung has introduced the same technology, right? Samsung has introduced, does Samsung produce? Samsung doesn't produce laptops. Sorry, my bad. So let's say Dell has introduced the same technology. Dell has introduced the same technology as MacBooks use, right? So apparently the screen displays better resolution. I don't know. They also have touch laptops and so on, right? It does. Okay, I didn't know that. Never seen much. But yeah, thank you for the clarification. Okay, now students, what will that do? So if the competitor of MacBook has started producing similar type of products, then how should that affect the market for MacBooks, right? How should that affect the market for MacBooks? Yeah, how should that affect the market for, right? Demand shifts to the left, exactly. Demand shifts to the left simply because obviously now some of these people might shift to Dell laptops or something else. Okay, another example. What if now there is more advanced machinery being used? What if more advanced machinery is being used by Apple to produce MacBooks? More advanced technology, more advanced machines, and so on. How will we show that on this equilibrium? Khizr or Khadija? Yeah. Right, you've already, yes, exactly. The supply will increase. Students, why will supply increase? Do you remember when we were talking about factors that affect supply and demand, right? So in that, I told you that one factor that affects supply is the technology that you use or the productivity. What is productivity? How many units? Productivity is simply output over input. What is productivity? Which we also call as efficiency, right? So productivity of a production process is, simply speaking, how much output can you produce? How many units of the good can you produce with certain amount of inputs? So if productivity is increasing because you have more advanced machineries now, which can produce 100 laptops per hour. Previously, it was 50 laptops per hour. Now it's 100 laptops per hour, for instance. So now, with more advanced technology, your ability to produce has increased. So your supply curve shifts to the right. When that happens, the new equilibrium will be where the new supply intersects with your market demand. And therefore, that means that your equilibrium price will decrease from $1,200, $1,500 to, let's say, $800. But your equilibrium quantity will increase from 1 million to 1.5 or 1.2 million, whatever, right? Easy? This is making sense? We'll shift to the right. Very good, Khadija. Perfect. Now, this brings us towards the end of market equilibrium. So market equilibrium we just discussed is a graph that shows the equilibrium position in the market. What is the market? Market is a place where buyers and sellers meet to make transactions. And market is made up of all the consumers who want to buy that good and all the producers who can produce that thing. That is what market is. So the graphs that we were just looking at were of the market equilibrium, which show what is happening in a certain market. And then based on different factors that we just discussed, we also analyzed how will market equilibrium change or how market equilibrium changes over time. Okay, if this is good, now we'll move on and talk about price elasticity of demand. What's the next thing we are heading towards? Now, this is a very interesting topic, and sometimes I'll say it's also something that some students find confusing, but yeah, but I'm sure that after this class, you should be clear as to what price elasticity of demand is, what is the purpose of calculating this, and what value it adds, right, in analysis, right? Okay, price elasticity of demand, right, students? We know that price and demand has inverse relationship. Any confusion so far? Now, we have not created any exception so far. I repeat, so far we have not created any exception that price and demand will have inverse, no exception to the rule that price and demand always have inverse relationship, which means that whenever price is higher, demand would be lower, right? It's always the case, no matter what product you talk about. Higher the price, lower the demand. Law of demand. This law of demand will be true for all the products. Easy? Okay, but what are we looking at in this formula? Now, let me write this down first and then I'll explain you more. So the short form of price elasticity demand is PED So PED is a formula that captures responsiveness of quantity demanded due to change in product price. Responsiveness of quantity demanded due to change in product price. Demanded due to change in product price. Now think about this. Whenever price will be higher, demand will decrease and vice versa. But by how much? By how much would the demand change due to any change in price? That is what the price elasticity of demand is used for. Okay, now before we dive any deeper into this, and which can make it a little more complicated than it is, let me ask you a simple question. Whichever country you belong to, obviously every year, after some time, there is inflation, right? Prices go up, right? Things become more expensive. Do you agree with me? Right? So on average, prices go up. That's what happens. We'll talk about inflation as well later on in our later topics of AS economics. But let's assume that two, uh, two products that you consume, let's say this, and let's say movie theater, right? Okay, now these are the two products that, let's say, someone consumes. Going to movie theater, that person really likes going and watching a movie in a cinema, and the price of a product like rice, right? Now if the price of both these items over some time has increased by 10%, let's say, if the price of both of these two items, let's say, increased by 10%, right? Which product, so this is positive 10% increase in the price of rice and positive 10%, like positive is just showing that it's an increase, nothing else, right? So if prices of rice increase by 10% and price of movie theaters increase by 10%, which of the two products do you expect a greater decrease in demand? Private messages only. Which of the two products do you expect a greater decrease in demand? If the price of rice and the price of movie theaters, both is increasing by 10%, right? For which of the two will you expect a greater decrease in demand? Exactly. So the correct answer is movie theater, right? Reason being, right? So rice is such a basic item that you use it in so many different dishes and so many, it's basically a basic food item, right? Whereas, and there is technically no substitute. So if you feel like having rice, the only way to, satisfy that need is to have rice. Yes or no? There's no substitute, right? And on the other hand, for movie theaters, I mean, you have substitutes. You can go find a free version on Netflix. Sorry, not on Netflix, YouTube perhaps. If you don't find it over there, you can spend some money. You can find it on Netflix, right? If you are still not lucky over there, you can download, right? Using proxies, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, depending upon what country, what area you are in, right? So coming back to the point, this is something that is not as much of a necessity as much this is. Do you agree? Even though the price of the two products was changing by the same extent, but rice showed more responsiveness in demand compared to movie theaters, right? Now let's take another example. I'm sure all of you must have traveled through, or let's take an example that you guys can more relate to, right? So when you are in school and you are feeling hungry, right? You are in school and you are feeling hungry, right? And then you are outside school and you are feeling hungry, right? So usually what happens that in school or college, whatever you want to call it, right? You have one option, you have one canteen or one cafe or whatever it is, right? So that is the only option for you to buy food from during the day. Yes or no, right? Or to have a cup of tea or coffee, whatever, right? When you are outside school with your friends, you have hundreds of options. You can go to any restaurant, you can go and choose any cafe that you like. Now, let's assume after some time, you get to find out that, you know, the decrease in the school cafe prices is 5%, and same as the decrease in the cafe prices, one of your cafes that you used to visit outside school. Okay, now think about this carefully. So did you all get the example? So there are two scenarios. One where you are within school, right? And that cafe is within the school. There are no options apart from this when you're during school hours, you can only eat from here. And then outside school, there's so many different cafes, right? Where you can go to and so on. So let's say you found out that the school cafe has reduced price by 5% and the outside school cafe has also reduced price by 5%. For which of the two would you expect more increase? For which of the two would you expect more increase in demand? Because we know it's inverse relationship, lower the prices, higher the demand. But for which of the two would you expect more increase in demand? Okay, Khizr has submitted his answer. Zohan has also submitted his answer. Khadija, what do you think? This is a tricky one, right? Right? So, right. So it should be, Zohan, it should be technically out of school. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Think about this. So you are in school for a definite, like for a fixed time, you know, fixed time, right? So from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. or whatever the school timing is. Outside school, right? I mean, all the time when you're not in school, you're outside school, right? In school, you only go to the cafe when you're really feeling hungry and stuff, right? I mean, it's kind of serving the purpose of a necessity, right? So it's your backup in case there's no other option. You didn't take anything to eat from your home and stuff like that, right? Or you're really feeling hungry and stuff like that. Whereas outside school, you can just go when you feel the need of hanging out or stuff like that. So in this scenario, you'll be more often in this scenario. Do you agree with me? So you are expected to be more often in this scenario compared to this scenario in school. Outside school is more often compared to in school, right? And since there are so many different occasions on which you are out of school, when you have a friend's birthday party to celebrate, when you have just hanging out and chilling with your friends, that's another occasion. Then blah blah blah, you feel like a little hungry, you want to eat something, you can go to a cafe. So there will be more situations that outside cafe is giving, because there might be options that might below the prices that outside cafe is giving.
सर मतलब
Right.
स्कूल में तो आगे मोनोपोली थी ना, लाइक वहां तो फिक्स्ड है, मतलब आपके पास कोई ऑप्शन नहीं, आप तो लोगे अगर लाइक 10%
True.
भी ज्यादा हो जाएगा आप लेंगे,
हाँ,
पर कैफे में
लेंगे.
लाइक कंपटीशन ज्यादा है, एंड अगर कम हो जाता है तो आपके पास ज्यादा लोग आएंगे, तो टेक्निकली आउटसाइड स्कूल ज्यादा होनी चाहिए.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. Great. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. So, exactly. So, the thing is, again, very important point that Zohan also brought up, right? In school, the audience is just from within the school, right? It's just from within the school. If you think about outside school, it's not only the students, it's also their parents, it's also all the other people who live in town, right? So, that will attract a greater number of people, knowing that, just imagine how do people respond when they get to find out that there are discounts on Gloria Jeans and other cafes, or I don't know, right? So that's another thing. So why are we taking all this example? You'll see in a bit. Now let's take another example. Let's say you go to shop every day and there is basically two items that you really like to consume. Let's say this is one, and then what could be a good example? uh, right? And then there is, okay. Now think about this new version of phone. Okay, now there are two products, let's say, that you have to compare, right? So one is a chocolate, which is normally how much price, right? I don't know. There are students sitting from different countries, right? So, but let me give you a standard amount, right? So let's say a typical chocolate, a very basic type of chocolate in Pakistan costs 30, 35 rupees, 40 rupees. I don't even remember, right? So let's say that's the price of a chocolate bar. Whereas a new phone version can cost you, even if it's the cheapest version, can cost you like, I mean, easy 35, $40,000, sorry, rupees, right? Now, if for both of these two items, let's say your prices are increasing by 15%. The price of, let's say, in fact, let's make it even more interesting. So let's say the price of this has increased by 100%, right? Uh, and the price of this has only increased by 50%. Now, can you make a guess that for which of the two items do you expect greater decrease in demand? So I've said that the price of chocolate has increased by 100%, and the price of phone that you wanted to, that you like, that you wanted to buy, its price has increased by 50%. For which of the two products would you expect more decrease? What do you think? Let's see if you got this correct. Right. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Zohan has submitted his answer. What about you, Khadija and Khizr? Take your time, think about it. If you need to do some calculations, you might want to. You may. Yeah. Right. So let's do some basic maths. Right? So if, let's say, this was 30 rupees, if a chocolate bar was 30 rupees, now with 100% increase, this means it will become double, right? So now the new price of a chocolate would be 60 rupees. Okay. Makes sense. Now, what is 50% of this? So if we calculate 50% of this, it will be half of this. So half of 35,000 is 17,500. Correct me if I'm wrong, because 17 twos are 34. Yeah, so it should be 17,500. So when you add this to this, that gives you how much? Not good with maths. 7 5s are 30. 7 plus 5 is 12, and 3, 4, 5. 52,500. 52,500. Now, students, you have to pay close attention over here. Khizr and Khatija. So even with the 100% increase, just look at the absolute increase. So technically, it's just 30 rupees increase in the price of a chocolate. I mean, still not something that it's not costing you a fortune. Whereas even with 50% increase in the price of a phone, since it is already a much expensive product compared to what a chocolate is, now its price has increased drastically, right? So where was 30, compare this amount to 52,500. It's a big increase. So there has been an increase of 17,500 rupees. Yes or no? Are you getting me? So most probably, as Zohan said, you will still see a greater decrease in the demand for this phone compared to the chocolate, because it's not taking, like, just imagine how we normally behave, right? So if I, let's say, you forget let me give you another example related to this. If you go to college and school every day, right? And I'm pretty sure that in 1 or 2 days, right, if not every day, after 2 or 3 days, you misplace your pen. Am I correct? Ball pen I'm talking about, right? Not a very fancy Parker pen I'm talking about. The normal ball pen that you use, right, with, I don't know how it works in schools these days. It just made me so nostalgic, right? So back in, right, so you are using a pen. Most times you, like, in 1 or 2 days, you need a new ball pen, right? And stuff like that. But what happens if you forget or misplace your phone, or, let's say something like a textbook? Will that be exactly the same thing? If you misplace your textbook, will that be exactly the same thing, like, misplacing a pen? Or do you think there's a huge difference? Right? There's a huge difference. Even if you compare pen with the notebook, I mean, sorry, not the notebook, like the textbook. The original version of a textbook in Pakistan, like a pen cost how much? 10, 15 rupees, not more than that. A textbook cost you, right? If it's not a pirated version, that can easily cost you like 1,500 rupees, 2,000 rupees, right? So if you ask your parents that you need to buy a new textbook, I'm damn sure they'll ask you why. Where is the previous one? But if you don't even need to tell your parents if you're going buying a new pen, right? Even if every day, right? Are you getting me? So, right, 30. Whoa, 30 rupees nowadays. Wow. No, the normal pen I'm talking about. The normal pen, ball pen. Is it costing 30 rupees? Right, 15. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Things have become very expensive in Pakistan. Okay, is this good, students? Are you getting me? So that's what you need to think about. Okay, now let's try to sum this up. So the idea, as I said, so price elasticity of demand is a formula that captures responsiveness of demand due to change in product prices. Now we know that some product prices, right? I repeat. Price elasticity of demand is a formula that captures responsiveness of quantity demanded due to change in prices. This is a confusing word. So due to change in prices. Easy? Is this clear so far? Now, some products undergo greater change due to change in price and some go less change, right? Right? Some products undergo demand changes more, and there are some products for which demand changes less, right? That we have just discussed. But why that happens, that is exactly what price elasticity of demand will explain to us, right? So what I've discussed so far is that after discussing all these different examples, we have come to the conclusion that there are some products for which change in price results in small change, right? Products which demand change more, products which demand changes less, right? So products for which the demand changes less are known as less elastic or inelastic, right? Right. So for products, I'm just making you familiar with the language so that when we use it in the future, we know that, right? Okay. Now, products for which the demand changes more due to change in price, that is known as what? This is known as more elastic, or you can simply call them elastic. So these products are known as more elastic or elastic, right? So we use both the terms to define this, or elastic. And for products for which the demand changes less due to change in price, those are known as less elastic or inelastic. Is everything clear so far? But yes, what are the exact reasons that this happens? That is what we are about to explore next. That is what we are about to explore next. Inelastic or less elastic. Students, are you following me or not? So based on all these different examples, we have seen that for different products, the change in demand would be different. Like the law of demand is not changing. Law of demand holds true at any point in time for any product. Whenever price is high, demand would be less. Whenever price is less, demand will be high. That's always true for any product at any point in time. But how much will be the change in demand due to change in price? That is what price elasticity of demand captures. And then within that, we said that we can divide categories, we can divide products in two categories. Either there will be products for which demand changes more due to change in price, or there will be products for which demand changes less due to change in price. Is everything clear so far? Products with more change are known as more elastic or elastic. Products with less change are known as less elastic or inelastic or less elastic. Easy? Okay, now we're about to quickly discuss the factors that affect price elasticity of demand. And then whatever we are left with, we'll continue from here, right? Factors affecting price elasticity of demand. Now, what do you think? What are the factors that affect price elasticity of demand? Right? So based on the example that I gave you, right? Khatija, Khizar, can you think of some factors that you think would affect price elasticity of demand? So what was the case in the first example where we compared rice with movie theaters? Right, exactly. So what was the first example, rice with movie theaters? Exactly, right? So the first factor that affect price elasticity of demand is necessity versus luxury. So if something is a necessity, right? So you have to buy that no matter what, right? And an even better example than rice would be some medicine like a Panadol, right? So if someone is having a headache or something of the sort, and they want to have a painkiller, right? So they won't go to the shop arguing about the price is high. They will not negotiate, or are you getting me what I'm trying to say? They will not give up their idea of buying Panadol only because they go to a shop and find out that it's 5 rupees or 10 rupees more expensive compared to what they expected. They will still buy it. I mean, that's the need, right? Either you tolerate the headache that you're having, or you just pay a little higher. And most people will go with paying a little higher because that's a necessity, as simple as that. Another example of this that I can give you is, think of having to, cab. If you're ordering a cab, no, and this is what happens. This is what a lot of companies do, right? In odd hours, the rates are higher, even if there are same number of cars on the road, right? Uber and Cream will cost you more in the odd hours compared to the usual hours. Why? Because they know that they don't have other options. They don't have other options available, right? So if in the morning I have to travel somewhere and I can't get my Uber or Careem or whatever cab, then I can go and take a public transport. I can ask someone for a lift. I can call my friend. There's so many other things I can do. But in an odd hour, like really late at night or really early in the morning, I don't have much options, right? So whatever price they charge, I'll pay, right? So this brings us to the second thing, that the number of substitutes. If you have more substitutes, there will be, it will be more elastic. Students, to think about this. Have a look at this. So if there are more substitutes available for a good that I just explained you with the carpooling thing, right? So then people will be more sensitive. Another word that I really like using, more sensitive. More elastic means more sensitive. Any small change in price makes you change demand by a large extent. So technically, more elastic also means more sensitive to what? To prices. So if there is more elastic demand, that means people are more sensitive, right? And as I was saying, that if you have more substitutes available during the day, you have more substitutes available to travel from one place to another. So if I see that the fares are even slightly higher than what I was expecting, what would I do? I'll perhaps call my friend to pick me up, or I'll go out, walk a little bit, go to the public transport bus stop or whatever it is, right? Take a train or bus or whatever and go wherever I wanted to. But when that option doesn't exist because public transport is closed, my friends are, it's an odd time, I don't have substitutes, then I can't be sensitive. I can't be sensitive to prices. Either I can just wait in the dark at cold, waiting for someone to come and rescue me, right? Or I pay a little higher and go to my home. What will you do? You'll pay a little higher and go to your home. Any confusion so far? Students following me? Right? So the more the substitutes, more elastic. More substitutes means you have more options and you'll be more sensitive to change in price, as I just told you. And if you have less substitutes, like late at night, you can't be sensitive. You will pay whatever it is. Yes or no? Is making sense? Right? Great. Another factor that affects price elasticity of demand is the time period involved. How much urgent, as I say, urgency, right? If something is urgent, right? So in some cases, it's kind of linked to the third one, but it can also be a separate point, right? So how much urgent it is, right? So let me give you an example. So if you have to buy a calculator, right, for your exam, right? So that is one thing. But let's assume that you have reached your examination hall, or you're just about to reach the examination hall. You've already left for your exam, right? And then all of a sudden you realize you don't have your calculator, right? Now, if you go back home to collect your collect your calculator, that won't be possible because then you'll miss your exam. Like it's crazy traffic on the road for some reason. Or you have another option to spend 500, 600 rupees to buy a new calculator. If it's a usual day at school, will you buy a new calculator? Wow, then what did you do? Did you go back home to collect it out? Or did you bought a new one? Wow. So just imagine, we have an example, real life. I was making this up, but we have found a person who has actually experienced this. Very nice one, right? So he had to buy it, right? No matter how much his parents hated him for that, but they had to buy him a new calculator, right? And it's good that you realized even before reaching me all, right? So coming back to the point, so if something is urgent, but on a normal day, trust me, neither Zohan would have said, nor his parents would have, let him do that. Are you getting me? Because that's not urgent. That's not urgent then, right? You can at least go on a normal school day without a calculator. It's not an exam day, so why worry, right? So that's what I meant, right? How much urgent it is, right? If I urgently need something, I'm not very sensitive to prices. If I can wait, then I'll be more sensitive. So that's the thing. Similarly, think about this. So if I have to, God forbid, if due to some emergency reason, I have to travel to another country, right? So all the people who live in other foreign countries, right? So either they're traveling back to their home country on some like just recreation or just fun trip or just, I mean, right? Or sometimes they are coming back to the country for a particular event, right? Now, what if they're coming for a particular event, let's say for a wedding or something, and so on and so forth, and all of a sudden they realize that, there is COVID and flights are closing and there's not many flights left and everything. If this is this person who's coming for a recreation and this is the person who's coming for an event, so the B has to come. It's an important event. I don't know, siblings wedding, his own wedding, her own wedding, right? So this person will buy the ticket no matter what, even if that's more expensive, even if that means, you know spending more money. But if this guy was coming in just to say hello to his friends or just to say hello to his family, which he can come after some time, right? So this person would most probably not book a ticket looking at that these are so expensive, but this person will spend extra money and come back. Are you getting me? So in this case, his demand is inelastic, right? And in this case, his demand is more elastic. He's sensitive. A is sensitive. More elastic, meaning he's sensitive to what? He's sensitive to prices. Whereas B is insensitive. He's not sensitive to prices. Why? Because he can't miss, right? This person can't miss a trip. Do you all agree with me? Is making sense, students? So that is how you can explain what urgency means, right? Then number of substitutes we have talked about, whether good is luxury versus a necessity. Then one last thing that we were talking about, proportion of income spent on a good. So the chocolate versus the phone example, or the pen versus the phone example that I was giving you. So that was of how much income you spend on a good. Now, let me give you a simple example. When I whine with my friends, or when I whine in front of someone else saying that, it's so expensive, there are so many bills I have to pay and everything, I never whine about the chocolate getting expensive, right? I never whine about a candy getting expensive, because even if I consume a chocolate every day, I mean, that's taking nothing off my income. But yeah, if I whine about electricity expense going up in Pakistan, if I whine about, the fuel prices going up, then that's legit, because, I mean, they take a big proportion of my income or anyone's income, right? Income spent on the good. So how much income you're spending on the good, that will determine whether it's more elastic or less elastic. So if you're spending a bigger proportion of income on that good, that will be more elastic. I will try to save on the electricity expense. How will I try to save on the electricity expense? In my house, I'll want everyone to use less electricity. I will want everyone to use, electricity saving appliances and all that, because I know that this saving can mean a lot. But I won't really care if I'm